You feel this nervousness on the phone there?
Sir, I've been trying to make an urgent phone call up there.
Well, I don't think it's something I want to do on an overseas phone.
You gotta make some phone calls. Hang up the phone. Prank caller. Prank caller.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to Packernet After Dark. This is the call-in show of the Packernet Podcast Network. If you'd like to call in, if you'd like to participate in the show, please feel free to do so. The phone number here is 608-501-0718. New callers go directly to the front of the line. We don't have any new callers today, but we got Daniel from California.
Hey, Ryan, Daniel from California.
What's up?
Yeah, I was just thinking about last year's draft and all the guys we got, and obviously they're targeting needs for Hafley's defense for the first year of what we need to make this defense work, right? So it was hitting a lot of safety, and it was filling the linebacker depth because we're going from two middle linebackers to three off-ball linebackers, one middle, two outside, right? So that's all a given, right? So with this year, right, now we get, because Hafley's going to be having this.
All right, I'm going to pause this for a second until the vacuuming stops. Sorry about that. All right, I think we're back. Sorry about that. Let us continue.
Defense, I know the Packers have their models and everything, right? So it's got to be within their models, but you have to look at who they got and just like, yeah, this is because it's being set up for what he wants to do on defense and what we want to do on defense, right? And obviously, got to throw all these caveats out there. They prioritize versatility, but we're going to see Hafley corners and Hafley edge rushers in this draft.
Sure.
On guys that will fit the 4-3, that are what he wants to do specifically and all that stuff. But I just think 75% of the decision is going to come down to Goot, 80%, then a little bit of the scouting staff, but then that little thumb, just like, oh yeah, that's the guy I want, Hafley, right? So I think just having him in, and our scouting staff is known for having their opinions, and I think having Hafley in the room, I think they respect him a lot, so they're going to make the right decisions when it comes to corner, when it comes to edge rusher, and just excited for this draft to come up. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the role of Hafley essentially is going to be to make sure that Gutekunst and the staff understand how the defense works, right? So, I mean, the what do you call it? The vibe I'm getting, that I've been getting since Gutekunst got here, is there's a very strict division of labor. And that may not be the case. I mean, we don't really get behind the scenes much with the Packers. And so maybe it's not this way. I know I've seen like the Rams and everything, and the head coach and that, I mean, a lot of dialogue, a lot of back and forth between coaches and whatnot. And maybe that happens in Green Bay. It's just Gutekunst wants to definitely put out the impression that that is not in any way the case. But I think it's, they need to get a firm grasp of what Hafley's looking for to make this defense great. At that point, they kind of recalibrate their what they're looking for in a player, and they just go on. So once I get that, I'm going to go find the player, and you just mind your freaking business. Again, maybe that's not the case. That's just kind of the impression that they put out, and I think there's a good chance that is roughly the case, right? So instead of looking for this type of player, we're kind of looking for a little bit more of these attributes. Got it. Let me do my job now. But you're right. Ultimately, we are looking for Hafley guys. And I'm excited about that, It's unfortunate that this seems to have caused some problems, especially for the defensive line. A lot of guys that we've gotten for Mike Pettin and for Joe Barry kind of fit a certain mold, and maybe they'll all take a step, but it kind of seems like it's not translating very well. Rashawn had one of his worst years. Lucas Van Ness has only been here 2 years, but it was worse than his rookie year. I don't think anybody on the defensive line got better. I think everybody got worse. Everybody did. So you hope that some of these guys can fight through that, but ultimately we're in a sense kind of rebuilding in a Hafley vision, and that's something to be excited about, aside from the fact that you can't do it all in 1 year, so it's going to take some time, which means we really need guys to step up.
Brian, Beard Cheese Benny here.
What's up, man?
Packers got Mecole Hardman, and I don't hate it. I think this is great, you know. Number one is he was getting like vet minimum last year in KC. So, you know, like if this situation arises where he has to cut him or whatever, the cap hit will not really be anything. But also, he's a great returner. What happened last year after the season ended? Keyshawn Nixon said he didn't want to return punts. And also, we can't trust Jaden Reed, and we don't want to do Jaden Reed because we need him to be more involved in the offense. So, there you go. Now, I think Mecole Hardman, I think he can fit very well in Matt LaFleur's system and offense. And, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, this is the only move that Gutey was going to do. It looks like he's not going to get a wide receiver now in the draft. How do you know that? People say these things like they know, like they're in the front office. Like, yeah, we know, but we just don't make any decisions. Like we just know. Like what? Come on, man. You have no idea what you're even saying. Like, you can still draft 2 receivers if you wanted to. Now, I hope he doesn't do that because obviously we have other needs. But and he should have drafted a wide receiver in the draft. He really should. But Mecole Hardman, I think, is a guy. He's really fast. I mean, like you can just like. I guess we could do the end arounds with him, probably, and we could also. I mean, I could see him, you know, being the downfield kind of guy. I could see it, but again, this seems more like a special teams, like, you know, kick returner, punt returner type of guy, which is fine because look at like last year where we like in punt returns, like dude, like we couldn't really get the yards necessary, you know, like to gain an advantage. I feel like Mecole Hardman's pretty good at that, dude. I mean, look at all these other teams, man. Like, they have a good punt returner, and then they put their offense in a good position. Like, that's just what it is, bro. So, yeah, I don't understand people complaining about this one. I think this is a great move. And, you know, it's always, I want him to do something. Oh, but no, not that. It's like, come on, man. This is great. You guys need to chill.
Well, it's like I've always said, just give me the name. Who do you want? And they'll probably go back to Devontae or something, which, whatever. DK Metcalf. Like, okay, let's say that they're gone in the first day and they didn't end up coming to Green Bay. Now what are you going to do? There's no answer. Look, here's another thing, and this is going to be something I want to work on for tomorrow. I've already started. I've already got a collection of names I'm excited to go look at. Also, my boy Trey, it's looking real sweet. There's a lot of overlap between Mecole Hardman and Jaden Reed. They're both smaller, speedy, mostly slot guys. So it's a little bit of a weird pickup, right? They're both kind of return guys, although Jaden Reed isn't really working out as a return guy, so he's probably going to be more of your punt return type of guy. He is mostly a punt returner. He doesn't do much kick return, but maybe he will. Maybe he'll be our full-time return guy so that Keyshawn can just focus on corner. It's possible. There's one other angle, though, and again, this is what I want to look at a little bit for tomorrow, and that is the Packers, and specifically Jaden Reed, really struggled last year with man coverage. 2023, not really. I looked at it, Jaden Reed was actually decent against man coverage, but for whatever reason, I went and pulled the Chiefs and the Packers, and there was, 12 wide receivers or something total that took a single snap at some point. Jaden Reed was the lowest graded wide receiver. His receiving grade was the lowest among everybody against man coverage. Mecole Hardman's quite good. He was really good last year, or 2023. He was really good in 2024. Romeo and Christian are also good, but Christian is not really ever on the field. And when he's not on the field, I think the whole team struggles, especially against man coverage. And although Romeo's pretty good at it, he's not like a premier X guy that's just going to be able to, break guys' ankles and get open all the time. Maybe that's kind of what you want, whatever. But it is kind of a question of, I would hate to think this is like the sole reason that he's just kind of a gadget piece that you move around, that you can kind of plug in once in a while, maybe against certain teams that play more man. You want a little bit more Mecole Hardman, and maybe either less Jaden Reed, or as Clayton was talking about, maybe you push him to the outside. I mean, maybe all these guys are just kind of chess pieces that we're going to move around. We'll have Mecole in the slot and Jaden Reed in the backfield and vice versa, a little bit like Randall Cobb for a while, where he's lining up in the backfield. You got guys split out. You got them in line. You got them behind the line. Just all kinds of goofy stuff so that Matt LaFleur can just feast and have fun. It does cause me some distress in terms of what does it actually fix. But again, Reed and Mecole are both speed guys. And there's a big argument about, Mecole Hardman doesn't have any deep targets. They don't use him that way. Well, they stopped using him that way, I think, when they got MVS. So the last 2 years, you're right, he didn't get targeted deep down the field. That doesn't mean he's not capable of it. In fact, and we talked about this, his first 2 years, that was how he was used, and he was targeted on deep passes pretty frequently. But I think they went in a different direction. They went and got MVS to be just sort of the straight speed guy, and so they used Mecole Hardman, who's capable of it, to be less of a field stretcher and more of a gadget player. So the question is, what do the Packers want? They love gadget players, so of course they're going to try to use them in that capacity. That we need help with punt return. He's a punt returner, so that's a no-brainer. I would just hate to think that we have no intention of using him as a field stretcher when that's really one of the main problems we have without Christian Watson. He has the speed and experience to do it, and we're like, yeah, but no. What do you mean, yeah, but no, you jag off? What do you mean? So who's going to do it? Well, Dobbs has got kind of sneaky 4.45 speed or something stupid. What are you even talking about? Now, with that said, there's still the draft. There's a lot of speed out there. The thing that actually got me thinking about this was I saw Matt Schneidman did a draft and he had Matthew Golden, and I just sat and thought about it. I'm like, you know what, man, that makes a lot of sense. Matthew Golden just makes sense. I mean, not only he's kind of seen, I don't know across the board exactly how he's viewed, and I know his stock went up, but it doesn't necessarily change the view because of the 40 time. But my impression was he's more of a Z receiver, kind of like a Christian Watson. Now, he ran a blazing fast, like 4.3 something. 4.39 was it, or 4.32? I don't remember what side of the 3 it was on. I think it was like a 4.39. I don't know. Very fast. But if he's good enough to be like an X receiver, he can do all the things, and he also happens to have speed. I mean, that to me is the sweet spot, because you're solving both problems. We need a guy that can get on the line like an X receiver, that can be in press man coverage and can just whoop the guy in front of him. You have to have somebody that can do that. Romeo can kind of do it. I think Wicks is real good at it, but we got some drop issues with Wicks. And I just think in general, he's not really in a good rhythm right now. You get a guy that can do that, but also has 4.3 something speed. Your number one X receiver can fly and get behind people as well as break their ankles in the short and intermediate routes. That's the money spot. Now, again, I'm not going to give away anything. I wanted to see if Matthew Golden was a good man guy, and I said, screw it. Let's just look at every wide receiver, and let's go through and check some boxes. Height, weight, 40, drop rate, and then I want to see man coverage the last 2 years, so it wasn't just a fluky thing. 2024 and 2023, how did you do against man coverage? I want to go over that tomorrow, but I don't even know how we got to this point. Oh, yeah, Mecole Hardman. Again, I don't think Mecole Hardman is ideal in anyone's mind, but I do think that there's a specific plan, and I do think it's a situation, to your point about, well, they're not going to draft somebody now. I think that's nonsense. However, they know that it's possible that they don't end up drafting someone at least early and actually fixing the problem, and they want to have some kind of a floor set where we at least have some kind of a plan if everything goes to hell and the wide receivers just don't make it to us. That's what Mecole Hardman is. But believe me, they are desperate to make sure that this is not the final answer. But remember, they're also desperate at edge. They're also desperate at defensive tackle. I think I don't know about desperate with the Hobbs pickup, but I mean, Hobbs, I think, is similar to Mecole, maybe a little bit more of a floor raiser. But I do think that there's some urgency, if you will, at corner. Definitely urgency at wide receiver, especially, I mean, it's just, there's so many freaking questions there. I don't know what we have in Jayden Reed. I like Jayden Reed, but he also has some really bad games, and he really struggled against man coverage last year, which is a problem. I like Wicks a lot. That dude is smooth as freaking butter, but something's not quite right. I don't think he's really on the same page with Jordan, and the drops are out of control. Romeo is way too up and down, especially, and not just on the field, but emotionally and mentally. And now we had Mecole Hardman, and I think that just adds more confusion than anything else. But, you know, if you got a plan for him, great. But, man, would it be nice to just get a guy that kind of, and it organizes everything else as well. You get a guy like this, it's like, okay, boom, he goes here. Now with him here, we can put him here. And now we can put him here, and boom, we got ourselves a group. Right now, it's a pile of like, I don't know, dude. And I'm not giving up on Christian. I'm excited about Christian, but the guy has to get back. He has to get healthy. This team is significantly better when he's on the field, but if he can't stay on the field, we got to find a new Christian. I hate to even go down that road. I've been super jacked about him from day one, but it just, I mean, you know, similar to Jair, you're great, but you can't be great if you're not on the field. All right, let's take a break. We got another beer, cheese, Benny.
Ryan, I need to expand on my last call.
All right.
Just a little bit. So I don't know, like, Hardman, I feel like he can give us something in our game, maybe, like, in our offense, like, in terms of, like, even, like, screen passes, like, because he's so quick, as long as we got the blocking, I think he can be a great asset, man. But I still do wonder, like, kind of what's our plan? Like, if he's only going to be the punt returner and stuff like that, which I'm fine with, it's cool, but it's like, we still have not addressed the problem. Like, we still need the deep threat. So, maybe Gutekunst is kind of sitting there thinking, well, I have these guys that I know are going to be there for me at 23 or 54, whatever it is, you know, first or second round. And I know that they can be my deep threat guy, you know? So, but we won't know that he was thinking that until the draft, or until this, you know, free agency thing's over and the draft starts or whatever. All I really wanted to say is that I think this was one of the smarter moves, and if you don't think so, go touch grass, bro. Like, yeah, I'm just sick of the whining, man, and the assumptions. We're going to be fine, and it's going to work out, and we're going to win the Super Bowl, bro. Because, for me, man, it's Super Bowl or bust, man. I always believe that we have a chance.
Oh, and that's it, right? You have to have a chance, and the GM's job is to make sure you have the best possible chance. And obviously there's a lot of room for growth here, and that's where Gutekunst needs to come in. The rest is up to the coaches and the players to, you know, get these guys prepared to do the right things, and then the players are the ones that got to execute. So we'll see. Like I've said 1,000 times, there's a lot of questions. We got to see what last year's crop can do. We got to see which guys can step up in the new scheme on defense. I'm hoping some defensive linemen, especially Rashawn Gary, do, and Lucas Van Ness absolutely needs to. And then obviously this year's crop, we got to see what we can get and what direction they end up going. But no matter what, even without a draft, we got a shot. Again, it comes down to Jordan, and if Jordan plays if he can get back to being a top 5 quarterback, we're in it. You know, do we have the best chance? It's impossible to say. I don't know. Could they beat the Eagles from last year? Probably not, but that team's not coming back next year. We got to see what that, there'll be a new top team that has different strengths and weaknesses and all that. So, we'll see how it goes. But yes, do we have a chance? Heck yeah, we got a chance. So, all right.
Hey, this Mecole Hardman signing kind of reminds me of just like the general thing that Packers do. So, laying it out there, Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith gets signed, and we draft Rashawn Gary. Adrian Amos gets signed. We draft Darnell Savage. You know, on and on and on. Billy Turner. I'm pretty sure Elton was the same year, but we do that a lot where, like, we set the baseline with, you know, a C to B level player, and then you get this at the same time you get the rookie that can learn from that player that's got experience as well. So I'm all for it. I think all this means is this year we're drafting a corner, we're drafting offensive line, and we're drafting a receiver.
There you go.
And I think they're telegraphing what they think their needs are. You know, something with last year that I thought specifically at edge rush and at defensive tackle, we played a lot of mobile quarterbacks, and especially early on when our pressure rate was worse. And you see that they played a lot of contain and, you know, spot rushing where you're containing until you get to your spot. So people like Hurts, Anthony Richardson, all those guys can't get out of the pocket. But I don't know. I think they might be telegraphing that they're going to roll with their edge rushers they got. It's I know that, like, the year they drafted Van Ness, they didn't telegraph it, but I don't know. And they might in their heart believe that it's a coaching thing. That's why they got a high level D-line coach. At least they think they do. I don't know if he is or isn't, and that's to be seen. But we need to I don't know. We've seen these people not address defensive line for a while when it was just Kenny, and then they drafted Devontae Wyatt. It took them a long time to address that when it was a big need. So it's interesting. They might be telegraphing something where they think their biggest needs are corner, offensive line depth, and receiver. So hopefully we get some good hits in the draft. I'm excited. Mecole Hardman, good PFF grades, fast guy. He fills the need we need. We just need somebody to get the defense off of us, right? And he's got good grades, so go Pack go.
Yeah, he's an asset probably in making it hard to really lock down the Green Bay Packers. That's where that whole gadget thing comes in. I mean, he's got the vertical speed to stretch you, vertical and horizontal, right? That's the West Coast offense. We want to spread you down the field. We also want to spread you from sideline to sideline. And I think he's really good at doing that. That's Matt LaFleur in a nutshell, man. He doesn't like being pinned down. He doesn't like when, he doesn't have enough in his bag to figure out how to make things work. And that comes down to making sure you got the right tools. If people can pin you down, you gotta have a zig for somebody's zag. If they're coming at you, you gotta be able to, to counter it. And you need pieces to be able to do that. And that's where Christian Watson comes in. It's if they want to compress the field, it makes it hard. That's the, again, the idea behind West Coast is if you spread everybody out, there's more space on the field to find open space. And the speed kind of stretches things out, vertically, which really creates a ton more space. And if you don't have that, things get compressed, and then you can, kind of press guys up, play man coverage, keep them off their game, and you're still got a compressed field. So even if he kind of gets away from them, there's somebody going to be in the area. You got linebackers poking around there. So he just needs pieces to be able to make sure, okay, you want to do that, here's what we're going to do from now on. And if you don't have that piece, you go get that piece. And for whatever reason, again, I'm assuming it's at least to some degree the speed element to stretch things out vertically. But for whatever reason, he identified a thing that we need, and Mecole Hardman has it.
Hey, Ryan, this is Andy, still in Kansas.
What's up, man?
I got a couple of thoughts. There's probably going to be a couple of phone calls here. With the Packers' extra salary cap space, I guess I had a thought. I remember from way back when they first signed the CBA that there is not only is there a maximum.
Oop, where'd you go?
that teams can spend, with that's the salary cap. But there's also a minimum that teams have to spend. I mean, this goes along with any workers union where it's, no, we want this much money, paid out to the workers. That's obviously what unions exist for. And I looked it up because I didn't have a number in mind. And it turns out, and this is something that I read that was dated, I think, February of this year. So it probably, I would hope that would be recent thoughts there. It said that 89% of a team's salary cap has to be spent over a 4-year average. So there's a floor, not just a ceiling. So I guess what I'm wondering is how teams will push money out into the future so that they can save on the cap, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at you, New Orleans. You're terrible at that. But what about the other way around? What advantage would it serve to a team to do that? And it would, because you don't want to be paying. It's the opposite of having to pay void years. Why pay for a guy who's no longer on the team a pretty good amount when it comes to void years? What about going the other way around? In other words, we have cap space that we don't want to spend on free agents just to spend money on free agents. How about we move money up and have higher salary cap hits so that there's more in the future for when a free agency class that's actually worth it comes around? Just some thoughts. I don't know if that's real, but it sounds real. Okay, I'll call you back. Bye.
So let me explore this. First of all, I'm very happy that you did that because I hadn't thought to ask that question. I've always asked the question, why don't teams just continually push money into next year? Now you can do that, but snowball it. So that one year I'm going to have like $500 million because I just keep carrying over so much money, and you wait for that big, I said it this year. It's a terrible free agent year, so this would be a great year to push it out. So it appears that I'm seeing what you're talking about, the 89%. That's an average over multiple years. So you can do it in terms of, like, if the Packers wanted to take a bunch this year and move it, as long as it averages out over 89%. 89%, by the way, of the 279.2 for 2025 would be a 248.5. So that is, like, if you wanted it to be around the average this year, you're looking at 248.5. And then, if they do come in under the threshold by the end of the cycle, so they run through cycles, which is interesting. It's not just a rolling thing. Teams must pay the difference directly to players, typically in a lump sum distribution among the team's roster by a deadline, often September 15th of the following year cycle. And also, just in case you were wondering, because I was, there's two different calculations. There is the total cap liabilities, which is everything that you're spending, and then there's also a top 51 that counts against your salary cap. It's kind of so anything under your top 51. Anyways, the 89% applies to total cap liabilities. As of right now, the Packers, according to Over the Cap, the total cap liabilities are at $281 million. So they're already over that. By the way, Andy in Kansas, I've missed you, and I love your calls because you always get me thinking. And as to your point about front loading, essentially, which I think that was kind of your point, I know I've explored that in the past in terms of, my whole thing is, I think they should do it. I don't know if I recall a team ever doing it. If you have a bunch of money, I would absolutely do it. I think what I even said a couple days ago was something to the effect of, and you may have called this in before I said it, but something to the effect of, it would be awesome if you could, like Zach Tom, let's say, you want to give that guy a contract right now. If you were to give him a big old contract and, there's a total amount, then there's a signing bonus, and then there's total guarantees. And for the Packers, the signing bonus is relatively close. But the bottom line is, if you could take a massive punishing hit this year on Zach Tom so that starting next year, you've got this massive contract with this massive player, but basically it's lower cap hits and very little guarantees that'll probably dry up by next year, maximizing your complete freedom. The only reason I could think that teams wouldn't necessarily do that is they like to spread out their risk a little bit, but I don't know why. Again, this is the point I made before. I feel like risk grows exponentially with time. So if you take the maximum risk financially now, when there's minimal risk of long-term, risk, because, what are the odds he's not going to perform today compared to 5 years from now? I don't know. I don't know. I guess there must be an argument against it because teams don't do it. They love leveraging the future for now. They love taking advantage of the increase in salary cap, so they take the minimal amount right now. The Packers do take pretty big hits in terms of cash right up front, so that a lot of the guarantees do kind of dry up, but then they still have these big, whatever you call it, bonuses that get spread out over the contract so that you can't really cut them. So, the point being, don't just expend cash, expend cap this year. And I just don't see teams doing that, and I guess I don't really know why. I did go to the robot here to look for a couple answers, and they came up with some. Well, maybe go back and double check for yourself. But it says the Eagles under GM Howie Roseman are known for creative cap management. They front-loaded contracts to keep future years clean. For instance, in Jalen Hurts' 2023 extension, which was 5 years, $255 million, his 2023 and 2024 cap hits were kept low. But they could have structured it even more aggressively up front. Historically, Roseman has used a pay-as-you-go approach, avoiding heavy future. In 2016, they front-loaded Fletcher Cox deal with a $26 million signing bonus paid up front, resulting in a $17 million cap hit in 2016, high for that year's $155.27 million cap, but it dropped significantly later. This gave them room to maneuver in future seasons. So I don't know why the example of Jalen Hurts was in there, but looks like one example, Fletcher Cox. It even says Green Bay Packers in 2013. When Rodgers signed his 5-year, $110 million extension in 2013, the Packers structured it with a $35 million signing bonus paid up front. The 2013 cap hit was $12 million, which wasn't astronomical, but was front-loaded compared to later years. They didn't push much into void years or future proration, keeping the back end lighter. This allowed them flexibility in the late 2010s to add players like Zadarius Smith and Preston Smith in 2019. Not sure that lines up, but that's fine. Seahawks Russell Wilson deal in 2015, 4-year, $87.6 million extension, $31 million signing bonus. 2015 cap was 11.2, higher than it could have been if it was spread more evenly. I don't think these are the best examples. The Fletcher Cox one was pretty good. It says Tom Brady occasionally front-loaded deals for key players to maintain flexibility. Gronkowski's 2012 extension had $8 million signing bonus, $7 million cap hit. Big for a tight end back then, but it tapered off. Brady's willingness to take lower cash deals also, we know about Brady and his low deals. Here's why teams rarely do it. Cash flow concerns. Owners prefer spreading cash payments over time rather than paying big sums up front. Front-loading a contract requires more immediate cash, even if the cap hit is the same over time. Most teams don't have or don't want to commit. That is a good point. Cash is a real thing, and we kind of just assume teams just have kind of unlimited money. They're multi-billion-dollar corporations. They have billions of dollars in cash at all times. Do you remember several years ago when the Raiders literally ran out of cash? They just didn't have the money. They couldn't pay people, not because they didn't have cap space, but because they literally didn't have money in the bank to do it. That could actually be part of it. I mean, Russ Ball has a job of working with the salary cap, but he also has to work with the accountants and understand what the cash flow is, and kind of line that up with income and how much actual physical money we can spend this year. And front loading it, presumably, you have to actually spend the cash in order for it to be reflected in the cap. Maybe just a big part of it. We want to, like any business, we don't want to lose money this year just so we can make more in future years, even if that kind of makes sense for, Brian Gutekunst would love it for being able to have more flexibility next year, but that's probably part of it. It says cap growth assumptions, which we already talked about. They know they're going to end up getting more money next year, so screw it, let's spend this money. Short-sighted, but probably part of it. Player leverage and preferences. Players and agents often want big signing bonuses spread over many years to minimize cap hits and maximize longevity, which is another good point. Because if you front-load contracts, players know that their guarantees are gone, and so this turns into like a one-year contract, and they're like, this bullcrap, I don't want that. I need some security beyond this 1 year. Competitive pressure, roster uncertainty, and CBA rules favor deferral. NFL allows signing bonuses to be prorated over 5 years. and unused cap space to roll over. This incentivizes kicking the can down the road. New Orleans has done this for years, staying competitive despite cap hell. I don't know about that. Front loading does leverage these tools, doesn't leverage the tools as effectively. So kind of like what we were saying as far as why not just roll it over, rather than dumping it this year, spend it next year, do some flashy signings or whatever. But that's about what I got, and I guess I get it. And I do think we have some contracts coming up this year, and we'll see what the Packers do with that. I think that there's a good chance that we may actually see that. This is a very unusual year where we have way more money than we usually do. And so I'll be interested to see, if they give Zach Tom a contract or some of the wide receivers, Romeo Doubs or whoever it ends up being. We'll see how they handle those contracts, if they're kind of standard or maybe a little bit heavier on the front end, which would be my preference. All right, let's take a break. We got more Andy from Kansas.
Hi, Ryan. It's Andy again. So this is more of a draft issue, and this might take several phone calls. So the mock drafts are always a lot of fun. You do them, Clayton does them. I enjoy those. We're looking at a big board. We're looking at other guys' mock drafts and all this kind of stuff. So obviously this is very predictive. And sprinkled in there are things like, because you guys keep track of those things, what are some of the size and testing numbers that Gutey prefers when it comes to choosing guys. Applying some of those, not simply predictions, but trends, I think is a really smart way to do good mock drafts. I guess I'm wondering if you guys, maybe it's Clayton too, so hopefully Clayton listens to Packernet After Dark. It would take a little bit of research, but trying to track more Gutey trends and then having mock drafts that are a little bit more Gutey-centric, for example. So like if you just go back the last 3 drafts, let's say, a couple of things that I thought of. I stayed up way too long last night trying to put my finger on, scratch the surface as far as what I'm getting at here. So take the last three drafts, for example. How many draft picks did Gutey go in with, and then how many did he come out with? And if it's typical for him to come out of a draft with more picks than he went in, that's a trend, right? So I believe this year he has 8, 1 compensatory pick. That's at the very end of the 7th round. That's different. The last 3 drafts specifically, he's had more draft picks than that, and he's come out, I think, every year with more draft picks, even though he's done some trading up, like in 2022 with Christian Watson. So there's one trend. Another trend would be he has chosen multiple players at a specific position. He's done that several years, so I'm curious. I would say yes, he's going to do that, and then it's a matter of, so when he did that, was he doing that because those positions had a lot of value in the draft, which you could kind of figure out by like big boards? Or was it because, there were gaps in our roster at that position? I'm trying to think of another one that I thought of, but I can't think off the top of my head. Anyway, I'll call back with a few more thoughts on this. Bye.
Yeah. Got my head kind of spinning in terms of, I'm envisioning some kind of like a heat map that would show, because it's not just the trend itself, because, for example, Gutey gets multiple positions. That may be a common thing across the NFL. I don't know. So what I would want to do is say, what does normal look like? And you could maybe do by round. You could do it across 7 rounds, all that kind of stuff. Gutey likes athletic guys. Well, maybe a lot of teams do, or maybe most teams do. I don't really know. I want to see, when you're talking about things that stand out, picture like I don't know, a heat map is probably wrong, but you've got like a center. This is where everybody clumps together, and Gutekunst is out here. That's more of like that is a Gutey specific thing. It could be him and like 2 other guys or whatever, but I want to compare him to other people. And so, because we I don't know, that's the hard part with doing this stuff, and especially since it's such a small sample size. I mean, you can make it a massive sample size and look at things like first round picks since, 1970, but then there's you're introducing problems where things change. And so you might say, like, this is the norm, but if you look at all GMs, they might all be clumped over in the corner because everybody kind of does things differently. And then if you do over the last 10 years, it's hard to identify a trend. Like, well, the Packers don't draft wide receivers. Well, the Packers haven't drafted wide receivers. I don't know that means that they won't. So I do tend to stay away from those. I know a lot of people really like that stuff as far as like, well, this is the arm length that they like, and this is the height that they like. And it's like, well, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to know because in all cases we're dealing with small sample sizes. It just is. There's nothing you can really do to get away from that. It's like Gutey's been doing this for 7 years. It's like, yeah, 7 is not a lot. 7 or 8 or whatever it is. I don't know which one this is, but that's not a lot. It's not enough to identify any kind of a trend, and the stupid thing is, well, Gutekunst would never draft a linebacker in the first round, and then he does it. Well, Gutekunst would never get somebody that small, and then he does it. It's only a trend until it's not a trend, or a hard line that they won't cross until they cross it. We don't know. Especially, you talk about motive. Well, was it because of this or because of that? Some of that we won't know. Was it because of value? Well, I wouldn't know unless I saw Gutekunst's draft board. You know what I mean? So it would be really difficult to try to pin down exactly the best way to do it. But at its core, it would have to be looking at the Packers' drafts compared to all 31 other teams and finding where they deviate. And finding ways to do that. And then when you can find those, that's when you can start to identify this, that, or the other. But again, even then, it becomes difficult because, again, you can look at it and say, well, they tend to do, in the first round, they like to pick players from major programs. Do you really think that Mike Green, I think is his name, out of Marshall, is somebody that they wouldn't draft? Of course they would. So what is the point of us? Why did we waste our time doing this little exercise? You know what I mean? Things change, and rules are made to be broken. I don't know if I actually used this little thought experiment or not, but I was thinking about it the other day. You say that there are hard lines and limits. They would never, ever do this or that or the other. I don't think that there are. I think there are sliding scales. If you have these short of arms, you can't play tackle. Well, that's not true. If you have short arms, then you need to excel in X, Y, and Z. You need to overcome that in some way, right? Well, he's short. Yeah, but he can jump through the frickin' stadium roof, okay? And he's got great hands, and he's a physical player. So we can overlook that. Generally speaking, we don't like wide receivers that are 5'9" because they can't jump. But on the other hand, if he can do X, Y, Z, then we would, look the other way. So as evidence of that, it's like, okay, well, what if he was 5 foot tall and 120 pounds? You're telling me that there's a scenario where they would never, ever in a million years draft that guy. Okay, what if he could fly? What if he could fly? Would he draft? The point is, yes, there is always a caveat. Oh, it says, no, nobody can fly. It's not the point. The point is there are no hard and fast rules. There are general guidelines that can be overcome with other things. There are superhuman people. We haven't had it in a while, but there was a period of time where there were these, we always talked up these wide receivers, like Tavon Austin type guys. Like there was always that one electric, he was usually a great kick returner and all that. Felt like there was one of those guys every year, but they were undersized and they were really small and you do all these things. You overlook it. You overlook it in that instance. So, I don't know. I generally stay away from that. It is interesting, but I just feel like it pushes us. I don't know. It's fun and it's interesting, but I think it becomes a problem when we set it in cement as opposed to just kind of seeing it and using it as a very general guide, unless there are specifics, like Gutekunst has talked about, and he's already, like Jaden Reed broke the mold, but he's talked about, he likes bigger receivers, guys, bigger players in general that can kind of hold up and take a beating and all that kind of stuff. So you can look at that and you can identify a guy and say, that's a Gutey guy right there. You can do that. You know, I think that the most Gutey thing in the world is a running back that is, 5'11", 225 or 220? That is a Gutekunst guy right there. And then if he has like a 10 RAS, you know, he's got speed and everything else. Bro, that's a Gutekunst guy. But at the same time, tell me there's a GM that wouldn't love that guy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, as we go along with this draft stuff, I'm always looking for interesting experiments, and it would be great. And if you want to brainstorm it with me, we can do that to try to come up with something. I've been, AI is fantastic with mathematical stuff, especially with things like Python. And Python is great at analyzing data. R is too. I've used some R, but usually that's just with packages like, they got a bunch of NFL data. You can use those packages to get stuff. But yeah, Python is great if you can get NFL draft data and have it kind of analyze it and whatnot. But you got to do it the right way, because otherwise you're finding patterns that aren't really patterns. They're just data points. You know what I mean? Correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, kind of thing. But I guess, again, what I would say is it's not enough to just say Gutekunst generally stands here in this clump, because maybe that's just a general clump for NFL draft wide receivers and everybody is kind of there. I need to find where he's different from other teams and other GMs. That's where it becomes somewhat interesting, even though, again, it might just be happenstance. It might not be anything in particular. So it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to look into.
Hey, Ryan, it's Andy. This should probably be the last call. I thought of another, trend, and that is the trade down trend.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's related to the other one that I was talking about. But I think about this, and of course the question is, well, is the other team willing to trade with you? But, identifying some possible trade down options, because the trend is that Gutey comes out of the draft with more picks than he goes in.
That, and we have less than usual this year. And then, stack on top of that, this is not a seemingly, most people tend to think you've got like maybe 10 or 11 or 12 top guys. And then from there through like 50 or 60 is another pile of just really solid players. So trade back, like you said, you got to find a partner that's willing to do it. But trade back definitely seems to be the thing. And yeah, Gutekunst, we only have 8 picks, which is just, he's got to be just in a breaking out in a sweat. I'm sure he's going to try to get something for Jair. It won't be much, but that'll, if we can do it before the draft, get us up to 9. But yeah, he's got to be breaking out in a cold sweat in the middle of the night.
I'm wondering if he'll do more of that, because he only has 8, whereas the last, as I was saying before, 3 seasons he has had more.
It's 11, I think.
I've kind of looked at the trade value chart, and I know that that's one of those, well, who knows if the other team's going to do it, but Buffalo has 2 picks in the second round.
Yeah, I love that.
We can move down 2 spots with them in the second.
I don't know if you get a second for that, though, moving down. You'd probably have to give back quite a bit. That might be like, I'll give you my first and a third, and you give me your second kind of thing. Because 2 spots at the back of the first. I mean, let me just pull up a trade chart. I might be way off. You'd have to give back something. I never know which one to use either. I swear they use the Jimmy Johnson. The one time I looked at it, I was like, which is like the worst one you can use. But I think Rich Hill is kind of a, not necessarily the best one mathematically, but in terms of like what NFL teams would actually do. So let's see, if we move back, where is Buffalo? Oh, that's quite a few spots actually. So that would be back to 30. So that's 196, 245. So 45 plus 4, so 49. So 49 is like a third round pick. So if they gave us their worst second round pick, that's 98. So we'd have to give back 49. So yeah, it'd be a third round pick. And that's exactly what our third round pick is worth. It's actually worth 48. So it was exactly right. We would have to give them our third round pick to get an additional second. And it would work out pretty perfectly as far as the math is concerned. So I'd be pretty good with that. I mean, obviously there's going to be a bunch of picks that are going to make us upset. And Minnesota's sitting right there, so they're going to take somebody that's going to make us scream. But, I mean, you're looking at, making 3 picks almost in the top 50, so that feels pretty good. And actually, which one did I do? I actually think I did I don't know. I don't remember which one I did. I think I did their worst Buffalo pick. I might have done 56, which would be fine. We'll take their better one. at 98. I mean, the value is 98. It's at pick 56. So we would have pick 30, and then in the second round, we would pick 54 and 56. That'd be pretty cool, man. Day 2 would be pretty fun. We'd have to wait a while, get our pick 87, and then call it a day. Actually, no, we gave away 87, so whatever. It's an option. It's an option.
And they have 3 picks in the 5th. So even weighing some of that, I guess maybe that's a whole separate show than doing a mock draft. Who are the teams that would be advantageous for the Packers to trade down with to pick up more picks, because that's what Gutey does. I just think injecting a little bit more of that into the discussion would make sense, and hopefully would relieve some Packers fans from the angst that they feel. I don't understand Packers fans when they're surprised that Gutey does something that they would never have done. Yeah, it's because he always does that.
Yeah, right.
Like, I mean, does anybody
always have to expect the unexpected? That is, as we get closer to the draft, that is like my number one goal. Like, okay, so here's my 10 guys that I'm. Not only do I really have convinced myself that these are great prospects, I've also convinced myself these are the only 10 that could possibly be. And then as it gets closer, you look at the 50 other prospects that could possibly be picked and realize that it's going to be one of them minus the guys that you like. It's like it ain't going to be those guys. It's going to be somebody else. It's going to be a position you don't want. It's going to be a player you don't want. It's going to be something you don't want. Doesn't mean it's not going to work out. But man, outside of like Devontae Wyatt, I cannot remember the last time a first-round pick came and I didn't just hang my head. Hated the Rashawn Gary pick. Jair was okay, but I didn't understand it. I was like, why? You traded up and it's not even that good. Hated the Jordan Love pick. Hated Quay Walker. Jordan Morgan was okay, fine. Never does what I want in the first round, ever.
surprised that they're always out of cheeseburgers at Chick-fil-A? Don't worry, dude. They're shipping some in April 31st. Oh, thanks, bro. It seems ridiculous that people are every year like, I can't believe you did that. You say that all the time. When are you going to believe the trends?
Expect the unexpected.
Know what they are to pay attention to those kinds of things. Remember, Gutey doesn't know who you are. He doesn't even know you exist. So your thoughts don't have any bearing on what he does.
That is funny because it's, we all talk online and we come to a consensus, right? We've all done the mocks. We've all collectively done 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 mocks. So we know what to do. Gutekunst hasn't looked at your freaking mocks. He doesn't care what your consensus you came to is. And they're having completely different discussions about which prospects are good and which prospects are bad. And there are a handful of guys that you love that Gutekunst could not give a crap about and has no interest in drafting.
Thank you, by the way, for speaking to that when it comes to this free agency stuff and fans that are so shocked. You and Clayton and all the guys have done a really good job of saying, why would Gutey do these things that you think are a good idea? He's got way more considerations than you do. Keep up the good work, and if there's a Gutey-centered kind of draft, mock draft talk, or even episode, especially if you get into some of the trends very deeply, I think that would be neat. I mean, we're a month out from the draft. The same old mock drafts might get a little boring after a while. They do. But also listen. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, it's, every time I do it, you try to think of how can we do it a little bit differently because, a mock draft's a mock draft, man. I mean, people send me mocks all the time, and I look at them like, okay, yeah, that's a mock. Like, I've never hated one. Maybe I have once in a while, but I mean, they all look fine, I guess. I don't know. Even I don't do very many mock drafts. I mean, I do them with you guys, and that's probably the only mock drafts that I do. I'm more interested in the prospects and kind of getting who I like and who I don't and why and all that. The mock drafts are what they are. It's just, especially, when I start falling in love with prospects, my mock drafts look the same every time because I end up taking the same guys every single time. And so it's like, okay, well, I got all my guys again. Yay. It's not super fun. But yeah, I will try to think about a Gutey-centric mock. I overthink everything, and I'm gonna, I'm trying to wrap my head around the best way to go about doing that. But we'll see. I started a long time ago doing something. It's one of those things where it was so long ago, I feel like I'd have to restart, and it's overwhelming and daunting to do it, so I probably just won't. Doing like the data-driven big board. it's I've downloaded all the data, so I just have to organize it and have the robots help me with the Python and all that stuff. But we'll see. We'll see how she goes. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. We have 4 calls right now, Andy, Drew, and Craig. So get your calls in. I will talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.